16th Battalion, the Madras Regiment Travancore, participated in the Battle of Basantar as part of 47 Infantry Brigade belonging to 54 Infantry Division. On 14th December, at about 7 a.m., the GOC of the division, General Wack Pinto, came to the battalion area in Bari, which incidentally, we, a company of our battalion, along with a squadron of 4 horse, had captured in the early hours of 7th December 1971 after crossing the international border at Galatanda on 5th of December at 0001 hours. Now, the GOC briefed the commanding officer at that point in time about the impending task, and he wanted the attack to go in the very same day evening. However, based on the advice of the commanding officer and the brigade commander, the GOC decided to postpone the attack by 24 hours, despite the fact that involved changing the plans of the entire division. Immediately after the GOC left, the commanding officer, along with his whole group, consisting of the intelligence officer, 4 company commanders, as also the mortar platoon commander, the battery commander, and forward observation officer, went to the area of operation to carry out their reconnaissance. Unfortunately, it is at that reconnaissance that we lost our forward observation officer in that area. The enemy had started shelling, and Captain Narendran succumbed to injuries right at the spot. That very evening, we sent out 4 officer-led patrols to the area of operations, one of which was led by the battalion 2IC Major R.P. Sharma. And we basically tried to find out through this patrol the extent of the minefield, the depth which we have to cross from the mine edge of the minefield rather to the objective, and then the gaps in the minefield, crossing places, as also the areas in the flanks which could possibly be occupied by the enemy. I must tell you at this point in time that they brought very valuable information based on which the operation was planned. Let me tell you now that we found that the time that we gained, the 24 hours that we gained, was extremely useful in that the commanding officer was able to pinpoint the objectives of the companies to the company commanders, and they were able to identify their objectives. Besides that, we were able to register our targets, and the patrols, as I explained, could be done in one full night. Now, the task allotted to the battalion was to establish a bridgehead across the Basantar River and the minefield to include 5R, 6R, the area of Lalial Reserve Forest, as also Sarachak, by rather on the night 15-16 December 1971. The task involved crossing the minefield as also the river, against enemy opposition and small arms fire, and thereafter wresting control of the objectives from the enemy, then converting the enemy defenses, as also digging up some more defenses as would be necessary to counter enemy's counterattack, remove enemy pockets of resistance within the bridgehead area, as also eliminate small arms fire from the periphery. And beyond that, we were also responsible for holding on to the bridgehead under all circumstances till last night, 17th December 71. The assessment of the enemy based on the information that we got was the enemy was occupying the entire area with a company plus, reinforced by elements of recce and support battalion. The detailed disposition as assessed by us was 5R, a platoon minus, 6R, a platoon, Lalyal Reserve Forest, a platoon plus, and Sarachak, a platoon. As regards the minefield is concerned, the total depth which we have to cross the minefield as well as the river was approximately 1600 yards. And then the area that were in front of us were quite obviously held by the enemy. And also we found, or rather we assessed, that the enemy defenses were well prepared with bunkers and communication trenches, as also some alternative positions. In fact, some of these positions were seen by us after we had captured these objectives. The plan of the battalion was to carry out attack of the objectives in two phases. In phase one, Delta and Alpha companies were to capture Sarachak and Lalyal Reserve Forest, with the H hour being at 1930 hours. H hour being the time when the forward troops cross the start line, which is right in front of the forming up place. This was to be followed by phase two, in which Bravo and Alpha companies were required to capture 5R and 6R respectively on orders. Now, as regards the progress of the operations are concerned, the operation progressed as we had planned. And let me take the first Charlie Company, or the Lalyal Reserve Forest Company. During the assault, the company lost two of their leading platoon commanders who were wounded. And the company had lost 9 Jawans and 30 Jawans wounded. They were able to cause enemy casualties of 14 people. The company gave their success signal at 21:30 hours. As regards the Delta Company, or the Sarachak Company, it had lost 11 soldiers and 27 of their men were wounded. The company caused 15 casualties to the enemy, and they gave the success signal at 2200 hours. As soon as the success signal was received, the commanding officer gave orders for the second phase to be launched. In the second phase, the Bravo and Alpha Company combined had total 7 killed and 32 people of theirs were wounded. They were able to cause a casualty of 20 soldiers of the Pakistan's military. As far as the success signal is concerned, 5R gave the success signal at 2300 hours and 6R at 2330 hours. Now for the counterattacks. Immediately after phase 1, the enemy attempted to launch a counterattack with a company and supported by a troop of armor. Unfortunately, at that point in time, we did not have our armor inducted into the bridgehead, and it was the 6 of our 106 RCL guns which did the job, and they did the job in a very fine manner. And towards the end of the counterattack, we had to resort to hand fighting to drive away the enemy who was attempting to counterattack our position. Then, after the phase 2, again enemy attempted, but that was a feeble effort and did not succeed. Next, on the 16th of December, that is when the enemy planned a detailed counterattack and launched a counterattack around 10:30 or so. Luckily for us, by that time, the armor had been inducted into the bridgehead, as also commanding officer, sensing the approximate direction from there where the enemy is likely to attack, had reinforced both 6R and Lalial Reserve Forest from troops from 5R and Sarachak companies. It was during that event, when the commanding officer was trying to readjust the troops in the midst of the battle, that an MMG burst came and hit him and killed him instantaneously. The regimental medical officer, Captain Surender Nath, who rushed to give him first aid, was also hit by a bullet, and we lost him also at that very moment. Then the actual problem cropped up, and the problem was to evacuate the CO and the RMO's body. At that time, luckily for me, I found Lieutenant Colonel T.P. Singh, later Major General, who was a CO of 18 Mechanized Infantry Rajriv. I ran up to him and explained to him the situation and requested him if he could make available a APC so that the commanding officer and the RMO could be evacuated. The problem was that keeping the commanding officer's body was detrimental to the morale of the battalion. By evening 17th December, around 1700 hours, the division decided to reinforce the bridgehead area with 6 Madras, which came and occupied defensive positions in our depth position. The next event was 17th December. That is, in the morning at about 5:30 hours, I was briefing the second in command, who had just returned from the forward companies. In fact, he had gone to the forward companies to be with the companies, to guide them, as also to make necessary adjustments. Since the commanding officer had passed away, I had passed a message late in the evening for him to return. I was briefing him exactly about the location of the battalion, various activities that was going on, as also the activities that was going on the neighboring brigades, the neighboring battalions. And it was at that time when the enemy started shelling intensely. And in that intense shelling, which I felt was an attempt by the enemy to launch a counterattack, and which I thought it was probably a pre-H-hour bombardment, one of the medium shells landed right inside our trench. In that, Three people were instantly killed: the intelligence officer, Second Lieutenant Shiv Charan Singh, and two radio operators. Myself and the second in command were gravely wounded, and we were evacuated. The second in command succumbed to his injuries in the hospital. The Battle of Basantar was grimly fought and a decisive battle of one corps in the Western theatre of the war. Thank you.